You all know him. You love him. Brandon Wark. He runs Free State Colorado. He runs Liberty on the Rocks NOCO. He is the winner of the Vern Bickle Award. That was last week. And he's one of the best activists in the state. So please welcome Brandon Wark.
Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. How's everybody doing tonight? Awesome. Thank you so much for being out here. What a beautiful day, huh? It's like this dark cloud has lifted over Denver since the legislative session is out, you know? And I don't know if you heard, but there was this new law they passed this year. Instead of getting pulled over, if you get pulled over for like a speeding or anything like that, instead of a traffic ticket, they actually give you a Colorado Rockies ticket, you know? And if you get pulled over twice, you'd actually force you to go. So that's how bad it is. Yeah, crazy, huh? But I think they are going to rename the Colorado Rockies, though. You know, they have the worst losing record in MLB history for like 120 years or something like that. You know, they're going to name them the Colorado Commies because the Commies always lose. Also, the world's worst record in human history, you know? Okay, lame joke, but I thought that was funny. So good stuff, but we had a crazy legislative session, absolutely wild. One of the most controversial legislative sessions in Colorado history for sure. So got a lot of slides, going to move through some stuff quick. Hold your questions to the end, but we're going to have an emotional roller coaster here of excitement, of sorrow, and rage. So here we go, folks. Let's see what happened this year in our state legislature. If you don't know me, Brandon Wark, born and raised in Colorado, did some political consulting, was a legislative aide down at the Capitol many years ago, worked at the National Association for Gun Rights. That's kind of how I got my feet wet in politics. 5 years ago, started Free State Colorado during the wonderful COVID years, of course, back then. It's been over 2 years with Northern Colorado Liberty on the Rocks, so it's been a blast. Anybody up north, please come and check us out. A lot of fun. So some of the changes from last year, let's start there. So if you don't know, we got 100 legislators serving in our state capitol, trying to represent however 5 million, 8 million people, whatever we have in Colorado, a lot. Absolutely insane, absolutely impossible. How can anybody represent more than just a couple people, if anything? But nonetheless, each state House member represents just about 89,000 residents, and each state senator represents about 165,000 residents. Absolutely crazy. So the big change from last year is the Republicans actually picked up 2 seats in the state House, meaning they were no longer in the super minority. That's important, and you'll see why at the very end. Super minority, if you're in the super majority, you can actually have a lot more power and do some other things that you couldn't normally otherwise. One of the interesting stories this year was we had 23 newly elected legislators out of that 100. So nearly a quarter of the legislators serving this year were brand new, first-timers down there. So like I said, Republicans picked up 3 state House seats in 2024, and working with libertarians did pay off. As Jim Wiley was talking about, there's a pledge going on that Hannah Goodman and Dave Williams started back in the day. But basically, green, if you're going to be a pro-liberty Republican or even a pro-liberty Democrat, you're going to stand for pro-liberty values, then, hey, maybe we can work out a deal. You don't have to have a libertarian trying to spoil your race. So this really paid off down in Colorado Springs with Rebecca Kelty winning by 3 votes. 3 votes, folks. If you think your vote doesn't matter, this is proof that it can. It can. Not 100% of the time, but some of the time, it can come down to 3 votes. Absolutely crazy. And Stephanie Vigil, if you know her, was one of the most extreme, far left, anti-family, anti-parent, the list goes on and on. She was an absolute nightmare. So big upgrade, one of the biggest upgrades we saw last year. So some of the details about the legislative session, if you don't know, they meet once per year. Still once too many, if you ask me. 120 days. 5 bills per legislator, kinda. I don't understand how it exactly works that you can have 733 bills introduced with only 100 legislators. Balanced budget. Colorado does have a balanced budget amendment, so that's pretty nice. Part of our state constitution. That was huge this year because of this massive budget shortfall we'll see. And of course, Tabor, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, is the only thing that has prevented us from becoming not just California, but communist Cuba, let's be honest here. So they can't raise our taxes without voter approval. Of course, there's all these little tricks and schemes and strategies they have to circumvent Tabor and, of course, take more of our hard-earned money. So we did a legislative live stream this year, second year in a row. We've done it before, but really the second year in a row we've really ran this type of program. So Michael Vance, Legislative Director, Libertarian Party of Colorado, give him a round of applause, please. Both of us hosted this live stream for 2+ hours every single Sunday night from January till May. Just wrapped it up. 18 weeks. We had 13 legislators guest star. We had other guests as well. Jimmy Smares. We had Natalie Menton. We had other great people join us to talk about what was going on in our state. Hannah Goodman, of course. We had over 8,287 views on YouTube during that time. So pretty exciting stuff. There's Ryan Gonzalez there, the new freshman state rep as well, one of the reps we had on there, and discussed bills and really empowered people to have a voice down at the state capitol. Because that's what it's all about, is getting involved, having a voice, and trying to make a difference. That's ultimately what we need to do. So some of the big stories of 2025, we'll talk a little bit about that. Does anybody know how you can tell a politician is lying? There you go. Yeah, their lips are moving, right? So, yeah. So let's see what were some of the big stories here. So starting off early last November, 1 week after a landslide victory, Colorado Senator Chris Hansen resigns, getting a cushy job at an energy company. Obviously had been planning on retiring before the election. So, vacancy appointments, if anybody's familiar with that term, that's been a huge controversy over the last few years. At one point, we had like 26 legislators that were appointed through vacancy committees, not even directly elected by the people. I mean, absolutely crazy. So, he ran against David Aiken, good libertarian there, and no Republican ran against him, of course, in that heart of Denver. But nonetheless, he won with a landslide victory and then resigned. So total scheme that these vacancy committees are. And there was actually 2 bills to address that this year that passed we'll talk about. The biggest thing, of course, was the budget. Like I said, there's a balanced budget we have here in Colorado. And of course, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights prevents these greedy legislators from stealing more of our money. So one of the big stories was a $750 million budget deficit. They were saying it was $1 billion for the longest time. It was $1.5 billion, then $1 billion. They're like, well, it's actually 750. But nonetheless, it's not because the state government doesn't have enough money. They have more money than ever because Tabor allows them to collect more based on population and inflation. So we've had inflation growth. We've had population growth a lot, right, over the last 5-10 years. If you've been in Colorado more than 10 years, I mean, you've seen the population skyrocket. If you've been alive for more than the last 5 years, you've seen inflation skyrocket, right? So they're able to collect more money than ever before historically, and they still have a $750 million budget deficit because they're spending like drunken sailors on a night on the town. So one of the big stories, of course, was this BIOS password leak. Check out a video I did with James Wiley if you're interested. We did some in-depth discussion on that. But last year, if you hadn't heard, before the 2024 election, just a slight recap here, a spreadsheet with a hidden sheet. So the sophisticated people we have at our Colorado Secretary of State's office, the passwords for all the voting machines were on a hidden tab. You just right click, hide the tab, and nobody will ever find it then. So it was posted online on June 21st, wasn't discovered until October 24th. So I mean, we're talking months and months and months that these passwords to all the voting, most of the voting machines in Colorado were online, unsecured. I mean, absolutely crazy. So it was such a controversy that at the beginning of this legislative session, some House Republicans refused to certify the election results, saying, hey, listen, we got to make a stand here. We have to make a public statement saying, hey, we don't really know. People have been talking about election integrity, election stealing, all this stuff, of course, since 2020. But here we go, folks. I mean, come on. This is like self-admitted that the passwords are online for this long. If there's any question of the election, this is the time to ask that question, right? So definitely one of the big stories to start the legislative session. One of the other big stories there was Senator Jaquez Lewis, very lovely, lovely woman. She had toxic treatment of her aides. She had them do yard work. So you can have legislative aides down at the Capitol. Most of them have 2. They work for you. They're paid from the state government. But she was having them do yard work at her house, bartending for campaign events, doing all of this stuff. They actually wrote this letter, which you can see here, where they accused her of wage theft. She forced them to sign NDAs, which is totally illegal, had them do all this other stuff with campaign finance, and then abuse of power dynamics. I mean, absolutely crazy. It was so bad that she was under an ethics investigation. And a letter popped up during this ethics investigation at the first couple weeks of the state legislature this year, saying how great she was from a former aide. Saying, no, this is an exaggeration. She treats everybody great. Then they asked that aide if they wrote that letter, and they said no. Turns out Senator Jaquez Lewis actually falsified a letter in support of herself, digging that hole just a little bit deeper. So interesting stuff there. She ended up resigning during the ethics investigation, was appointed, got an appointment, of course, another vacancy election selection where you had a Democratic insider take her place. So not any better off for the people of Colorado, but nonetheless, one of the interesting stories. It wouldn't be a year down at the state capitol without some sort of harassment of the staff and some sort of the issues down there. 733 bills. We all have that look when the bills come due in the mail. Well, folks, we had a lot of those this year. 733, absolutely insane. Now, you got 120 days with 100 legislators. Do you think they're reading these bills? Do you think they're understanding the nuanced, detailed, specific, the background, the history, the unintended consequences, this rigorous debate that they're engaged in, like you learn in civics class? Totally false, 100% false. Obviously false. There's no chance. Half the time, they don't know what they're voting on. House leadership or Senate leadership says, you vote for this, you vote for that, vote yes, vote no, and they do it 90% of the time. Absolutely crazy. So let's start with the good stuff, right? I'm going to start off on a high note here. One of the great bills, we have Representative Ken DeGraff there, one of Colorado's liberty leaders. I would say the most libertarian legislator we have down at the state capitol. Awesome guy. Check out videos I've done with him. But he's been the torchbearer carrying this civil asset forfeiture reform. His bill, 1067 this year, would have actually eliminated civil asset forfeiture here in Colorado, turning it into criminal asset forfeiture, which means you'd have to have a criminal conviction before the police can confiscate your property or steal your money, basically. Of course, they didn't like that, now did they? These Democrats are usually defund the police. No. Not when it comes to civil asset forfeiture, of course. And of course, we have some of those Republicans, the law and order Republicans who are former cops or wish they were cops, who voted this down as well. So died in committee, unfortunately. This bill will come back. Civil asset forfeiture is ripe for reform here in Colorado. And just to completely get rid of it would be one of the biggest victories for liberty in our generation, which I think is very possible. Another great bill that you may or may not be surprised that was killed, and this was a bill for locking up child rapists. If you didn't know, we're starting off on a real positive note here, folks. Glad you already ate. But something's like 25% or whatever of people who rape a child get probation in Colorado. It's something insane. It's sickening. It's absolutely outrageous. Representative Brandy Bradley's been fighting this fight for years to ensure that child rapists actually have to serve jail time. And guess what? They killed this bill in committee. They didn't think it was a good idea. So the names there highlighted. You actually had one Democrat vote for the bill, which was Chad Clifford. Got to give him slight credit there. But you had Jennifer Bacon, Cecilia Espinoza, Lorena Garcia, Yara Zoke, Michael Carter, and Javier Marbre all vote to protect child rapists, guys. So, we're setting the stage here about how extreme they are down there, how wild they are down there. These are uncomfortable topics, but this is what's happening in our state. And that's the reality of where we're at, folks, that even child rapists get some protection from our state legislature. Another great bill here, I called this the Afuera bill. Awesome bill from Senator Mark Baisley, who's actually running for governor this year. This bill was awesome. It was like the laundry list of things to repeal. It would have repealed the cage-free egg law. It would have repealed the plastic bag ban. It would have ensured that nuclear energy is clean energy. It would have repealed climate groups. It was like the craziest bill of all time, and it would have saved the average Coloradan $4,000 a year. So of course they killed it, you know what I mean? But awesome bill. Got to give him big credit for that one. Pretty exciting stuff. Just imagine if we had a pro-liberty legislator, folks. What would be possible? Another great bill testified in support of this one. There's me in the picture there next to, that's Shane Madsen. She's actually the chief legal counsel for the Independence Institute. John Caldera took this picture of me. We were down there testifying in support of government transparency laws. Actually, it's pretty exciting. The Independence Institute, Caldera, Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition, as well as these other groups, even some left-wing journalist types, have created this open government coalition called, Team Transparency. Pretty exciting stuff, but they helped get this bill drafted. They were down there testifying in support of it. I mean, there's definitely becoming this movement to try and increase government transparency. So it was good stuff. Didn't make it very far, of course, but nonetheless, good bill. Great bill. I don't know about you guys, but remember January 1st when all of a sudden all the eggs in Colorado had to be cage-free? And we couldn't, eggs were super expensive. You couldn't find them for a while. The market stabilized a little bit. Absolutely insane. I mean, to say that somebody has to be fined or arrested if you're smuggling eggs into Colorado, or you have a large egg producing operation and the chickens are caged, they'll throw you in jail. I mean, it's crazy. I said, no to the caged chickens, but yes to caging people for caging chickens. Absolutely crazy. A great bill that Representative Ryan Gonzalez with the support of the Libertarian Party of Colorado introduced, and of course didn't make it out of committee, but a lot of us in this room were down there testifying on it. So there we go, folks. Another good bill from Representative Gonzalez. Senator Pelton and Representative Puglisi was to repeal the recycled paper carryout bag fee. So this isn't even to bring back plastic bags, folks. This is the 10 cents that they extort out of you when you go to the grocery store for this paper bag that's falling apart before you put your groceries in it, right? You look at it wrong and your groceries are on the floor. Yeah, so this would have repealed that 10%. Of course, too extreme for Colorado, too extreme to have free paper bags. I mean, how absolutely insane is that, Great bill. Would love to see this one pass. And I think a version of this will pass here in Colorado with some more work. is the Tamale Act, as Ryan Gonzalez was calling it. It already passed in Arizona just a couple years ago, but it would expand the Colorado Cottage Foods Act. So right now, you remember during the Nuggets finals 2 years ago, I think it was, when there was like that street vendor selling burritos out of his car, out of his cooler or whatever, like the police like tackled him. It was on video, so it got on social media and stuff like that, like arrested him for selling these illegal burritos and tamales and things like that. So this bill would actually expand the cottage food industry, Cottage Food Act, to allow people to sell other types of goods that require refrigeration. Of course, I was listening to that committee testimony. They were saying, no, we can't have this, folks, because what if somebody gets sick? You know, there could be an outbreak. All of a sudden, these people are eating this food. And it's like, come on. The government wants to be our parent, of course, as always, right? Telling us what we can and can't eat. Absolutely insane. But good bill. I'm hoping that one comes back. Another good bill out there, we have Representative Scott Bottoms there. Who was, these are all screenshots from our videos that we did. And pretty good stuff here. He wanted to ensure that children should get consent from their parents, or that medical professionals would have to get consent of the parent before medical procedures. So, of course, as we saw 2 weeks ago here, the whole transgender type of stuff plays into this. Of course, abortion, and of course, other types of health things. Right now, I think it's in Colorado. Like if you're 12 or 13 years old, you can actually consent to certain medical things outside of your parents' purview. Like absolutely insane. You know, what do they know, right, as a kid? So he was running this bill. He's been this torchbearer for child and parental rights. So, of course, didn't make it very far. As you can imagine, right? Spoiler alert, most of the good bills died. I thought this was interesting. I think Colorado's alcohol laws are ripe for reform. I think this is a winning issue. You know, anytime it's on the ballot, Colorado voters support loosening our alcohol restrictions. So, you know, I was actually really in support of this bill, House Bill 1237, to extend it just 1/2 hour, folks, just 1/2 hour. Right now we have a 2 a.m. cutoff, right? You go downtown, you're there till 2 a.m., last call, they cut it off. This would have brought it till 2:30 p.m., or 2:30 a.m., excuse me, and then you could still consume until 3 a.m. I mean, isn't that like the most minor, marginal thing? But nope, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, all these other groups came out against it. And it's so interesting because you can search for the lobbyists and see who supports and opposes these bills and how much power they have, right? Like, I think it's a really interesting case study to see what can and can't pass in our state government. I mean, even something like this to just barely loosen up liquor laws, I think there's a way to make this happen in the future, but unfortunately, we're not there yet. So kind of a good temperature gauge, I guess, of where we're at in terms of our freedom and liberty. I actually really like this one as well. This was a Democrat bill, House Bill 1243, the police officer questions during traffic stop. So, you know, right now, you're right, the cops pull you over and they say, hey, do you know why I pulled you over? Well, this bill would ban them from saying that. They wouldn't be able to ask you, like, to self-incriminate, basically. They would have to say, here's why I pulled you over. You didn't stop fully at the stop sign. You ran a red light. You're speeding, whatever. They would have to tell you initially and have that conversation. They wouldn't be trying to get you to admit to some sort of wrongdoing. So great bill. Didn't make it very far, unfortunately. I was really hopeful on this one. Something I think that could happen. I'd love to see this kind of criminal justice reform happen at some point in the future. One bill that did pass, our benevolent governor, Jared Polis, the most authoritarian, phony libertarian we've seen, did pass and did sign House Bill 1040 to add nuclear energy as clean energy. So that's a good thing, right? Because it's all about, it's all about clean energy. It's all about protecting the environment. Of course, that's what all these legislators want to do. So wind and solar, but then actually they've been working on this for years, this bipartisan effort to ensure that clean energy is considered clean energy, nuclear energy. So good stuff there. You know, that makes Homer Simpson happy for sure. Another good one that passed is the K vehicles. Has anybody seen these things? We're going to start seeing them if you haven't. So basically to title and register, it's like the smallest vehicle that they have in Japan. I don't think I could fit in one. But if you're out in some farm somewhere and you want to have this little tiny thing, you can get a Mitsubishi mini cab, a Daihatsu, a Subaru Sandbar, you know, these funny little things. So expect to see those in Colorado at some point. So one good thing, right? A marginal win for victory there to actually be able to have these little vehicles for farm work and other such things. So kind of cool, right? Kind of cool. Take what victories we can get, you know, even our cheap little Japanese cars. We'll take them. Vacancy appointment reform. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, this whole idea of vacancy committees, right? So if somebody resigns right now in the state legislature, a vacancy committee would basically appoint them. So people of that same political party in that same district would get together. It's usually 30, 40 people, and they have a little vote, and they decide who's going to be replaced. So sometimes it could be like 20 people decide who's that next state legislator is in these vacancy committees. So this has been a major issue for years, and of course we've seen some of the most extreme anti-liberty legislators get appointed through this process. So there's been a lot of talk, bipartisan talk for reform, and 2 bills actually passed this year. Basically, sister bills 1315 and 1319. Same bill, just one applies to county commissioners, one applies to the General Assembly. So that was a little bit of excitement there. So just to give you the brief breakdown here, if anybody's interested, if somebody resigns that's in a major political party after July 31st of an even-numbered year and before July 31st of an odd-number year, a vacancy committee will still select that candidate to serve until the next odd-year November election. So this bill is actually going to creates a new type of election. We're going to have a new election here in Colorado because of that, called a vacancy election. So it'll be on the odd-year November coordinated election. Only unaffiliated voters and voters affiliated with the vacating member's political party may vote in the vacancy election. Candidates for the vacancy election are required to submit a nominating statement and sign a petition, and then they serve until the next November general election. So pretty interesting. Based on the effective date of this bill, the first vacancy election can occur starting in 2027, so 2 years from now. So kind of interesting. We're going to have a new election here in Colorado based on vacancy appointments and vacancy committees. So that's a big change to Colorado election law for any politicos out there. Now, of course, our legislators down there, all PhDs in Austrian economics, they're not making any mistakes in terms of deciding how wealthy our people are going to be or how they're going to use our money. Of course, we know that's not true whatsoever. They have not read Economics in One Lesson. They wouldn't know what that is, of course, at all. So big thing with economic ignorance. These are some of the bills that I would say fall into that category. So big one, House Bill 1005. Who's excited to have the Sundance Film Festival come to Colorado? Come to Boulder. $34 million. $34 million are what the taxpayers of Colorado are going to be paying to them in tax credits in order to basically bribe them or get them to come to our state. So they can make a movie. So, of course, as with all these little wealth redistribution schemes, the whole state of Colorado is on the hook to help support the Sundance Film Festival, but usually just the people in Boulder are probably going to be the ones to benefit from it because that's where the festival is going to be. So I'd say, some of these bills are proof that Jared Polis is no libertarian to sign this and then brag about it. So that's a big one. Another one, prohibiting price gouging in sales of necessities. That's right. Colorado passed its first price control law, House Bill 1010. Absolutely and utterly insane. If the governor declares an emergency, we have a disaster emergency, God forbid we ever have a COVID type of a situation again or a natural disaster, some other scenario. If that ever happens, then you are legally unable to raise your prices by more than 10%. If you raise it by 10%, then you are going to jail. Well, you're going to start with fines, don't get me wrong, but you know what happens if you don't pay those fines. So there you go. If it amounts to price gouging if the price is increased by more than 10% of the price at which the seller sold or offered for sale similar goods or services before the disaster began. So there you go, folks. 10%. Think of when I was here last week, they were thinking about the price of a bottle of water. I think Caldera was saying, that's 10 cents. So you raise it to 12 cents, now you're breaking the law. Because now all of a sudden there's a shortage or a disaster in the supply chain and you can't get that material. It's extreme, right? This is absolutely crazy, And there's a little Yara Zoke. She's our new freshman legislator down there. You can see her little face in the corner there. Absolutely and utterly ignorant and totally the opposite of anything to do with rational thinking. So crazy stuff, crazy stuff. What does this kind of bill do, right? It creates an incentive to list your prices higher initially. Say an emergency is coming, right? This is just me spitballing here, but if you knew there was going to be an emergency, you're like, hey, let's preemptively raise our prices before the disaster declaration. So that way, we're covered in case all of a sudden there's an issue. So you're creating these perverse incentives, right? That's how markets work. And of course, the government behind it is they're doing it for the good. And Yara Zoke, even on Twitter, on X, she was saying that was the reason why our eggs were so high, is because it was corporate greed. And that these grocery stores were gouging the consumers because they could take advantage of us because of the bird flu scare. And that's why they were raising the prices. This coordinated conspiracy among all the grocers across Colorado are meeting in back rooms to raise our price of eggs. And she proudly posted, we're going to stop that. That's this bill I'm running this week. And it's like, it's insanity. Like, it's not even close to reality, right? I'm like, these people are like dangerous. It's like they're like toddlers with guns. You know what I mean? It's like they're ignorant and dangerous. It's the worst combination. Another one here, and I love this headline from the Denver Pest: skeptical governor Jared Polis. And it was trepidation. With skepticism, he still signed this bill to basically ban new liquor licenses for grocery stores. Because, and I get it. I used to work at a liquor store back in the day. It was a blast. But these mom and pop liquor stores are suffering in Colorado since they allowed grocery stores, gas stations, and other places to sell liquor, right? Or to sell beer, full strength beer. You can buy wine. And it's great. It's great for the consumer. The people support it. You put it to a vote, people are going to support this 100%. People of Colorado want to buy their booze anywhere they want. We got some of the best craft beer in the world, for heaven's sakes, Want to buy it at the grocery store, convenience store, the car wash? Why not, But Senate Bill 33, this has bipartisan support to basically ban any new drugstore liquor licenses, preventing this. So it's protectionism, right? So our wonderful libertarian governor there was skeptical when he signed it, but still signed it nonetheless. You guys are going to love this one. Online marketplace surveillance is what I call it. Senate Bill 70. It's sitting on Jared Polis' desk right now. He has not signed it yet. He can let it become law or he can veto it. We'll see. He's actually kind of good on some of this stuff, but this bill requires online marketplaces to notify law enforcement if a third-party seller attempts to sell stolen goods to a Colorado consumer. Online marketplaces must have a mechanism to communicate with law enforcement and procedures in place to detect organized retail crime. I don't know how they're going to do that. A marketplace's violation is a deceptive trade practice under the Colorado Consumer Protection Act. So, think of this. The onus is now on these online marketplaces, right? So you got Facebook Marketplace. What are they going to do? They're going to err on the side of caution. They don't want the Attorney General coming after them, right? So they're going to say, well, if this seems like organized retail crime, we're going to try and stop it. So there's your eBay, your Facebook Marketplace. If Craigslist is still used, I don't know if it is, but that's kind of the idea behind here. Absolutely crazy. Of course, you had some Republicans on this bill because they're all gung-ho law and order types who are going to use the government to stop all crime. It's been very successful so far to stop the crime in Colorado, especially retail theft. So, this is going to do it, right? It's already illegal to sell stolen goods, but now they're going to create a new situation here. So crazy stuff. Bad stuff for sure. Now, this one, of course, one of the most controversial bills of the legislative session. There's multiple articles. This article was just from a couple days ago, May 14th. Lyft joins Uber in request for Colorado governor to veto this rideshare bill. So absolutely horrific bills, House Bill 1291. And it's a bad situation, right? There's people who take advantage of the system, criminals who maybe are using somebody else's account to be a rideshare driver, get the money, and maybe sometimes they're nefarious and they do bad things, right? They could assault somebody, rob somebody. It happens, right? That's the reality of the world we live in. But of course, the government officials are all-knowing and wonderful legislators, know that they can stop that. They can save our lives through this system here. So basically, the bill will require, among other things, more safeguards for rideshare vehicles, including continuous audio and video recording during rides. So not only if you're a rideshare driver, would you have to have some biometric data to scan your face or your eyeball before you start your ride, and then it's continuously recording, and that's going to save everybody. But of course, Uber and Lyft are like, we can't do this. Like the logistics, the expense of the infrastructure change is too much. We're just going to leave Colorado. And Brianna Titone, everybody's favorite legislator down there, said that, if they can't protect the people, they shouldn't be in Colorado then. That is the mindset of these people down there. It's absolutely insane. It's aggravating, it's infuriating, but it's interesting nonetheless. So we'll see what happens. Polis might veto this one. I would not be shocked if he did. Really hoping he does. How many thousands of Coloradans depend on ride shares just to make extra money, or maybe as their full-time job, right? There you go. So, this would be a horrible bill, especially if you're a privacy advocate or you're somebody who doesn't want to be filmed 100% of the time. So there you go. This is one of the biggest bills of the year. Really glad it failed. Give credit to Natalie Menton for that little political cartoon there. She used some AI to create that. But Senate Bill 5, Jared Polis did the right thing and vetoed this bill just recently. So basically, I don't know what your thoughts are on unions, but in Colorado, we're a modified state. We're not a right-to-work state. We're not a total pro-union state, of course. But this bill would totally upend that and totally change things. This bill, when it was introduced, there was already talk of these business interests coming out and saying, we're running a ballot initiative for right to work. We're going to pour millions of dollars in Colorado to run a right to work ballot initiative to say that nobody is compelled to join a union. Whether you want to join a union or not, I think it should be voluntary instead of being forced into it. But of course, that's what this bill was all about. So right now, this is from a video I did with Natalie Menton. Check out that video if you're interested at freestatecolorado.com. So right now, to start an open shop in Colorado, you have to have a 50% plus one of the employees have to agree. And then you basically start a union, but you're not required to participate in the union. You're not required to pay dues, right? You're not forced to. Now, in Colorado, you have to do a second vote to get a closed shop, which would mean everybody who works there is required to pay union dues. Now, where do these union dues go? I mean, anybody who's spent 10 minutes on Tracer, our Secretary of State's campaign finance reform website, or campaign finance website, knows that the unions go to Democratic candidates, they go to union-backed ballot measures, they go to some really bad authoritarian type of stuff. So that's why the Democrats are so gung-ho about this bill, because they want more people paying into their unions that they use for political purposes, of course. So this, right now in Colorado, you have to have 75% of the employees have to agree. And that seems somewhat reasonable. You know, it's a compromise. But of course, this bill, Senate Bill 5, would have erased that second vote. So only that first vote. You get 50% plus one, and now you're a closed shop. And whether you want to be part of that union or not, you have to give up part of your paycheck. So bad news. Polis did the right thing, vetoed the bill. Good stuff. Now here's another one. I love this headline, another Denver Post headline. Bipartisan vote kills governor's plan to lower homeowners insurance costs in Colorado. Wow, our wonderful governor. He's going to lower insurance costs. Then you read the next line. The bill would have tacked a 1% fee onto property insurance policies in Colorado, increasing the average premium by $32 a year. It's like, it doesn't compute exactly. So it's going to lower our homeowners insurance costs by increasing our homeowners insurance. And the craziest thing is how much of the media buys into this, right? That's what they say all the time. Just briefly in this little corner here, this is from the fiscal note, the bill directs insurers and the Fair Plan Association to collect annual fees from certain homeowners insurance policyholders in high-risk areas and pay these fees to the enterprise, which is a government business. The fee is equal to 0.5% of the premiums collected by insurers on homeowners insurance policies for properties that do not have resilient roof systems. The enterprise may not collect more than $100 million in fees over the first 5 years. So the idea is they're going to basically tax everybody, force everybody to pay more on your insurance, and then they're going to use that money to build more resilient roof systems, which maybe 100 years from now or 50 years from now or 20 years from now, who knows, that will bring down insurance costs. I mean, that's the logic behind this system. That's the logic of it. It's absolutely insane. The little skull and crossbone is because this bill died, and that's a good thing. That's a good one, to die. Guns, we need more guns, folks. You know, you think you have enough, guarantee you don't have enough. And ammo. You know, I've read the Second Amendment recently, and I don't remember it saying anything about what we're going to be talking about here. For some reason, they don't care. I don't know. It's kind of weird. So, of course, gun shows, one of the biggest targets. There was 14 anti-gun bills that passed. Just going to cover a few of them. But House Bill 1238 makes it nearly impossible for just an average person to have a gun show. This is all the requirements because gun shows are so dangerous, you know? And people are just like shooting up gun shows. Like, are you insane? Like, it's the safest place there is. Everybody's got a gun, you know what I mean? They have armed security. But like, people are like, well, they're stealing guns from gun shows and then using them in criminal. It's like, these people have never been to a gun show. They have no idea what a gun show is, right? They think it's like a marketplace in some movie in a third world country or something like that, right? So this bill requires security plans by promoters be submitted to appropriate law enforcement. So you have to come up with a security plan, increasing the cost time, give that to law enforcement. You also have to carry liability insurance for incidents that may occur at gun shows, require firearms brought into the gun show are tagged to ensure chain of custody, because who's going to lose their, who wants to lose their gun? Prohibiting persons under 18 years old from entering gun shows without a parent, grandparent, or guardian unless the 18-year-old serves in the military. Okay. Requiring certification of vendors by promoters, requiring that notices be posted related to vendor and gun show requirements and setting display and storage requirements of vendor items and removing the $10 limit on the fee of a FFL may charge for their services and completing required background checks of the gun show. So it's just making it more difficult. Obviously their goal, we know their goal. Their goal is total disarmament. Their goal is to abolish the Second Amendment. I mean, they've basically said that. That is their goal, and they're going to do it one step at a time. The big kahuna here, folks, of course, most controversial bill of the year, Senate Bill 3, signed by our governor. Absolutely and utterly horrible. So just the highlights of this one. This is the worst anti-gun bill in Colorado history. Basically turns Coloradans into second-class citizens where we're not able to buy firearms like our neighbors in other states. So this bill will establish a process for a person to purchase firearms. You'd have to basically pass a firearm-related course that meets certain criteria from CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and the Department of Natural Resources. But in order to take, that's not enough. Not anybody can just take this firearm safety course. If you want to take this course, you have to get permission from your sheriff. You have to get a course eligibility card by applying to your sheriff. So you apply to your sheriff for the course eligibility card, and then he approves you. Then you can go to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife class to learn firearm laws and safety stuff, I guess. Who knows what's actually going to be in that class. And then there you go. So of course, this is going to cost money. This is going to take a lot of time. It's definitely going to make it a lot harder, right? It's going to make it to the point where you have to be either really into wanting to buy a semi-automatic firearm with a detachable magazine, or wealthy, a collector or something like that. But the average mom and pop, the average Joe, right? The average working class person in Colorado is like, I don't know anything about this. They're not going to do it. All you're doing is depriving them of their rights to self-defense. Criminals obviously aren't going to deal with any of this. So absolutely crazy, absolutely insane. And of course, this is going to solve all the gun violence problems in Colorado and prevent any criminals from causing any danger in the future, right? That's what they say, at least. Absolutely and utterly shameful. I had to put the pictures and the names of these people up there, because you ever see these people in public, you should shame them and yell at them and tell them to leave Colorado, because they don't belong here, that's for sure. Another big gun one here was making it illegal for under 21-year-olds to buy ammo. The Democratic Party, the champion of youth rights and the youth rights agenda and all these things that they love, protecting the kids and giving them all these freedoms and everything like that. Well, illegal for anybody under 21 to buy ammunition in Colorado under House Bill 1133, which Governor Polis did sign. So absolutely crazy there. Should be taking effect, I think, August 1st of this year. So, attack on the culture, right? They want to get rid of firearms culture. They don't want young people growing up with comfortability or, being comfortable with firearms, using firearms, being part of their lives. They want to try and cut that off. But guns are cool, so good luck there. This is a big one. This is one that kind of flew under the radar. My friends over at RMGO call it the gun store Gestapo. So, a lot of people, right, you see this online all the time. They say, do not comply. I will not comply. I'm not going to follow this. The sheriffs need to stand up and nobody should follow these laws. Well, they thought of that by giving the state government and the Department of Revenue police powers. So now you have statewide level police responsible for enforcing these laws at FFLs, at gun stores across the state. So they're not relying on your local police and your local sheriff to enforce these laws, because that's why the magazine ban hasn't been enforced so much, right? We know that the magazine bans, you can still go most places and buy a 30-round magazine. It's been illegal for a decade in Colorado to do that. But the local sheriffs, local police, they don't care. They don't care. So now they have a police force that will care about that. So this is from Leslie Hollywood at her article over at We the Second and Rally for Our Rights. Definitely worth reading if you want to dig into it. But she said, if passed and signed by the governor, which I expect it will be, it would grant police officer status to employees within the Department of Revenue's new Firearms Dealer Division, giving them the ability to carry weapons, conduct investigations, and make arrests. In other words, if you're an FFL, the same agency that regulates your sales tax license can now also slap on a badge and start a criminal investigation into your business. This isn't just regulatory oversight. This is full-on law enforcement shift, and it's targeted squarely at Colorado's licensed gun stores, and gun owners too. So there you go. Bad news there all around, folks, and I see a lot of frowns. I see a lot of sad people in there, but, it's not all bad, right? Come on. So let's move on to a different topic here. That's enough on guns. There's more than enough to talk about there, but attacks on our sacred democracy. They love democracy so much down there, right? It's this backbone of our civilization, except when it isn't. Except when the people use their voice and their votes to do something they don't like. Then democracy is all of a sudden a problem. So this is a big one, House Bill 1327. Bad news here. Actually, thanks to Natalie Menton and Senator Pelton, they actually got this watered down a bit in a good way. It was awesome to see. They got some amendments added to this bill that actually made it a little bit better. Not great, but nonetheless, they're making it harder for people to get things on the ballot. So the direct democracy, our ability to get initiatives, citizen-led initiatives on the ballot, is one of the cornerstones of our society here in Colorado for liberty-minded individuals to have an impact, to shift our constitution and make things a little bit more free. So of course they don't like that. One of the big things about this bill is that you have to notify the Secretary of State in a form and manner prescribed by the Secretary of State when an initiative or referendum petition that is being circulated has received 75% of the required number of signatures. So it's really hard to do. I don't know if you've been involved with the citizen-led initiative before. I've done it, carry petitions for lowering the income tax and this and that. So for the petitioners have to basically track all the signatures, know when they're at 75% of that threshold, notify the Secretary of State, and if they don't, they can be fined. I mean, absolutely crazy. So just making it harder, more difficult for individuals to get stuff on the ballot. Another one here, and I gotta say, he doesn't deserve a lot of kudos, but Jared deserves kudos for this one, folks. he vetoed Senate Bill 77. And I would say this is an attack on our democracy because it's an attack on transparency. It's an attack on our Colorado Open Records Act. If you're familiar with CORA, that is an amazing law we've had for 50 plus years in Colorado. It allows individuals to know what's going on within our government. You can file a CORA request to find out how the government's spending your money, what they're doing, and it's awesome. It's a total system set up so that individuals can understand what's happening at the local government or statewide government. So this would have made it more difficult. I testified against this bill, and Jared vetoed it. He did the right thing, you know. Broken clocks struck again. So good stuff there. You got a little Mike Tyson's excited. Another one here that also died, super thankful for this, House Joint Resolution 1025, 1023. A lot of us were down there testifying on this one too. Actually, absolutely crazy. This bill was crazy. So like it said at the beginning that in the introduction to it, it's like Colorado is a representative, we are a Republican form of government, which they never say, right? They're always saying we're a democracy. But this one specifically said we are a Republican form of government, which means the people elect us to make the decisions for them. And that's why Tabor is unconstitutional, because Tabor constrains us as elected representatives from doing whatever we want. And the citizens who put that on the ballot using democratic process circumvented or subverted the Republican form of government by doing so. I mean, so twisted, so absolutely insane. Thankfully, they didn't even let this one get to a full floor out of the House. Really excited that this one failed. Scary stuff. I mean, they're going to use taxpayer money to have the state legislature sue the Attorney General, the people of Colorado, in order to repeal our taxpayers' Bill of Rights. I mean, it's insane. And they're complaining about Tabor. They want to steal every penny we have, folks. So the stakes have never been higher. That is for sure. You know, of course, one of the big news stories this year for the Democrats down in Denver, one of their goals, one of their objectives is to fight back against the orange Hitler in Washington, D.C., right? So that was the theme of some of these other bills coming up here, you know. So 1321, which did pass, of course, and Polis signed this. I did a little video on this one. You can check it out on my YouTube channel, Free State Colorado. But House Bill 1321 creates a $4 million slush fund for the governor to use to engage in legal action against President Trump. So, you know, all these lawsuits, and we're in this like the most litigious system right now. The state is suing the municipalities who are suing the state, and the state is suing the federal government, and the federal government's suing the states. It's like it's crazy stuff. So, of course, they want to use some of our money. And I know our roads are so good here in Colorado that, hey, we can spare giving up $4 million from our Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, you know, that cash fund. We don't need that money. Let's just give it to Jared Polis so he can play legal games against the president to raise his image, right? That was the idea. I mean, a $4 million slush fund, basically totally unaccountable for them to use in legal fights against the federal government. So craziness. This is where we're at, folks. Very interesting stuff. Of course, one of the most controversial bills, this one went right up to the buzzer this last day of the legislative session. You see poor little sad Mr. Iceman over there. They don't like ice. So he's melting in the corner there. Senate Bill 276 to protect civil rights immigration status. So right now in Colorado law, it is illegal for the state level law enforcement or state level governments to report somebody's legal status to the federal government unless required by law. So if legally they're asked to do it, they will. But they're not going to volunteer that information, right? They know somebody's here illegally. It's against the law for them. They can get fined, go to jail, whatever, if they report that somebody to ICE or whoever. Right? Well, this extends it to counties and cities. So that means your city and your county, if they know somebody's here illegally, maybe they arrest them, throw them in jail for some horrible crime. They know they're here illegally because maybe the person admits to it. Well, they cannot legally report that to federal law enforcement. They can't legally report that to get that person deported. So that's the whole genesis of this bill, is to protect illegal aliens. I get it. Their talking points are good. We got to protect people, and all these kids and families are being torn apart, this and this and that. When you look at the reality of it, this is what it's really about. So interesting. Also illegal for childcare schools, childcare centers, schools, libraries, etc., to ask about immigration status. So they can't even, so any form, they can't ask you, they can't question, don't ask, don't tell about your immigration status. So interesting bill there, folks. Made some headlines, got on libs of TikTok, of course. This was at 200,000 views at that point, but this was probably hours after it passed. It says Democrats in Colorado just passed Senate Bill 276. The bill restricts local officials from working with ICE, limits where ICE can operate, and prevents police from keeping illegals in prison for ICE. Tom Homan should pay them a visit. So they're setting up this fight, right? Like they know Colorado's going to lose federal funding. It's like 30% of our budget comes from the federal government. They know that there's this big fight. That's why they're creating the slush fund. And that's why they're passing these laws as a direct middle finger to the federal government. Do Better Denver said, hey, Pam Bondi, Donald Trump, add this bill to your complaint filed against Denver and Colorado. Every one of these legislators who voted yes should be arrested for interfering with federal immigration authorities. The bill allows criminal migrants to vacate their guilty convictions. This should be illegal, protecting criminal migrants and granting them special privileges. So definitely made some headlines, a lot of controversy there, folks. Transformers, a more polite way of saying transgenders, I guess. But, I always thought that Shakira's song kind of told the whole story that hips don't lie. There's everybody's favorite transgender lawmaker. Of course, very controversial bill. These pictures Michael Vance took down at the Capitol. There's like 700 people who signed up to testify against this bill, House Bill 1312. Legal protections for transgender individuals, Governor just signed it this last week. Basically, if you're in a custody dispute, make sure who you marry and have kids with, folks, because if one of you gets divorced and you disagree about transgendering your kid, putting them on hormones or giving them surgery, you will lose custody. Legally, the judge will be required to consider that coercive control and say that you are losing custody of your kid if you don't go along with the gender transition stuff. That's why 700 people signed up for this bill. We saw a lot of people get involved. Pastors and churches who normally are very silent politically were starting to get involved. It's absolutely crazy. That's one facet of the bill. The other facet of the bill is it's illegal for you to dead name or misgender somebody on purpose as part of your public accommodations. So think of Jack Phillips, the cake baker over at Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, right? He refused to bake the cake. Then it was such happy gay marriage because he's a Christian man. He didn't believe in it. He says, I'll bake any cake you want, just not that one because it's against my values. Well, they took him to court, of course. He's been to court multiple times, went to the Supreme Court. You had Lori Smith, the web designer here in Colorado, also targeted by these radical activists. So this is just setting the stage. We know what's going to happen, right? There's going to be people out there looking for one business to not go along with this and say, bake me that cake that has this name on it. And if you refuse, we're taking you to court and we're throwing the book at you, So craziness, folks. What a clown world we're in right now. Michael Vance's post here. Kudos to CPAN Colorado and Christian homeschoolers for defending liberty. Horrific claims of state-sponsored child abuse by parents and teachers must end. Fight for kids and parental rights. There are so many people who signed up, so many people who showed up and spoke against this one. So really good stuff. Hopefully people get activated and aware and start fighting back because it is crazy, folks. But of course, the question we always must ask is who's paying for it? Well, thanks to House Bill 1309, you're paying for it, folks. It's not enough. It's not enough that these bills are signed into law and these people are given these protections. But not only do you have to go by whatever they're saying, you got to pay for it all too. So that's House Bill 1309, protect access to gender-affirming healthcare. The bill codifies coverage for gender-affirming care in state law for state-regulated health plans, which is pretty much every health plan there is. Additionally, under current law, testosterone prescriptions are tracked through the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. This bill requires the program to block all such entries from view once the prescription is archived so they can let people get more testosterone. Could be good if you're a bodybuilder or something, Finally, the bill allows the Health Insurance Affordability Enterprise to accept gift grants and donations for doing this. So basically, any state-regulated health plan, transgender surgery is going to be covered. No excitement here. Wow, geez. But wait, there's more. Not only is it going to be the transgender surgeries, but of course it's going to be the abortions. So Amendment 79 passed last year, eliminating the provision in the Colorado State Constitution preventing taxpayer-funded abortions. Yes, we prevented taxpayer-funded abortions up until November of last year. Took effect this year. So of course that's not enough. As soon as that passed, this was the idea, folks. So Planned Parenthood and all these other companies that are big Democratic donors, this is the game, right? Regardless of what you think about the issues, the idea is they're funneling money to their friends. That's how you win in politics. You take other people's money and give it to your friends. That's what they're doing here. And then those people use it to help you get reelected and help get other people elected that are going to serve the same agenda. So basically, not only gender-affirming care, but abortions as well are going to be covered for pregnancy-related services. I think that summary is actually from the other bill, but nonetheless, abortions covered by taxpayers now. And there you go, unlimited. There's no fiscal note on this bill. Or the fiscal note is just says they have no idea how much it's going to cost. But it's going to be, there's no limit. It could be an unlimited amount of our taxpayer money going for this. So crazy stuff. But just when you thought you were safe, just when you thought, hey, at least we got our legal weed, at least we got our craft beer, the fact is they're going after that too. So a tax on our natural medicine and alternative health. And there's even a bill I completely forgot to put in here. But nonetheless, this was the one that has made me so angry So angry, I'm questioning whether to try and derail. I'm hoping that part of me hopes that it derails a governor's campaign there, because it's his fault that this bill he used a super motion to bring new life to this bill. So Senate Bill 72, Kratom. Anybody familiar with Kratom? Right? A lot of people love it. I got a coworker with MS, chronic pain. He takes gobs of it every day. He doesn't have to take those opioids. He doesn't have to take big pharma stuff, right? Like, it's great. There's so many people across Colorado that use it for pain management, for other purposes. But it's dangerous, don't you know? Don't you know dozens and dozens of people are dying every year from Kratom? Well, let's regulate it. Let's create a black market for Kratom. That'll solve the overdose problem or the death problem, right? That's literally what they're saying. So potency limit. Regulations, yeah, in terms of who can sell it, how it has to be locked up on glass cases, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on. The story here, this bill was going to die. Horrible bill, made it out of the Senate, made it to the House last week of the legislative session in the House Appropriations Committee. Sitting there, Emily Sirota, the chair of the Appropriations Committee, didn't like this bill. She wanted it to die, so she didn't put it on the calendar. It was going to just die because they have 120 days. They have a limit, right? So if you just don't hear the bill, that's the last time they're meeting, it's never going to get heard. Dies on the calendar. It's just a way to get rid of the bill. And then we had Representative Scott Bottoms, who's normally a liberty leader, who's a champion for all things truth, freedom, and the American way, decided to use this as an example, is what he said. He said, I'm going to use this as a way to stick it to the Democrats, because there's other good bills. There's a nuclear workforce bill and other ones that they're letting die in the calendar too. But I can use a super motion. It's never been used in like 25 years. I can make this motion to pull something and refer to the House as a whole and bypass the calendar. So he did it. And he said the only reason he did it for Senate Bill 72 is because he had the votes to get it passed. And it was going to stick it to the Democrats. And it was going to cause division in their caucus and cause problems and get infighting. And, that sounds like a good thing, right? But the reality is this is going to become law potentially. If Jared Polis signs this or allows this to become law, thousands of Coloradans across the state are going to suffer. And our freedom is going to be infringed upon. So, you can make all the political statements you want. Votes are votes. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I can like these people. We can say they're champions and this and that, but they do something that's going to impoverish us, take away our liberty, take away our freedom. They don't deserve higher office at that point. They deserve to be chastised, to have their entire campaign derailed, as Thomas the Train in the corner there is doing. So there we go. So that's one of the big ones. That was a big sticking point for me. Another bill here, the worst cannabis bill we saw in recent memory, Senate Bill 76, because we got to protect people from high potency weed. That's what you always hear all the time. This isn't the marijuana we smoked back in the 60s, man. This stuff is crazy, it's like out of control. You do dabs and now all of a sudden you're on the moon, man. We can't allow this, especially for people under 25 years. That's always that magic age, right? Well, the brain's not fully developed till 25 years old. But of course, let's let them vote. Let's let them have surgeries. Let's let them do whatever. Okay, but yeah. Can't buy ammo. No, you're too crazy. And then you can't buy weed was the idea behind this bill. So they were going to basically 76. It did die, thankfully. Really excited about that. But this bill would have prevented people from buying too much potency if you're under 25. Now, I don't know about you, but if you wanted to get high, wouldn't you smoke just twice as much? Like, what is this solving, right? It's like the same with the nicotine limits in cigarettes. It's like, oh, great, now I got to smoke twice as many cigarettes to get the same buzz. Who is this helping, right? Who is this helping? Nobody. It's not helping anybody. But that was the idea behind Senate Bill 76 is we need to have everything labeled. We need better labels because people don't know what they're doing. People are so irresponsible. They have no idea what they're ingesting. And if they're under 25, they can't be trusted to decide how much marijuana they use. So we have to have laws. Now, the industry, actually, one credit to the bill sponsors here, the industry came back and said, listen, you're going to shut down our businesses. You'll destroy legal cannabis in Colorado if this passes. The majority of our customers are under 25, for heaven's sakes. And they're buying dabs. They're buying high potency stuff. You want to limit it to whatever, it's not going to work. So the bill sponsor said, okay, and they killed the bill. They've amended it, removed stuff out of it, and then the bill ended up dying. So I got to say kudos, regardless of what their intentions were, they did listen a little bit and killed the bill. So really happy that Senate Bill 76 did fail. Definitely a victory there. Now I got to say, a lot of depressing news tonight, right? A lot of sad stories. I saw a few tears, saw a few groans, saw a few fist shakes in the back there. But I got to say, we had one of the biggest wins, one of the biggest victories for the year that I hope will encourage everybody in this room to become grassroots activists, to speak out, to stand up, to use your voice, and do everything you can to preserve our liberty and fight for freedom. So I don't know, who here thinks the government should be able to decide who can use the internet? Anybody? Come on, no devil's advocate, okay. Now, what if they're caught selling guns online? What if they're caught selling drugs online? What if they're caught trying to sell children online? Not so great now, huh? Not so good, right? So this bill, of course, all these are problems, right? We know this. We hear stories all the time, and you should have listened to the testimony for Senate Bill 86. I mean, it was teary-eyed mother after teary-eyed mother, and I'm not trying to disparage them or say their stories aren't meaningful. I mean, their kids died, for heaven's sakes, right? My kid got on Snapchat and ended up getting fentanyl and dying. So now we need to ban everybody from the internet. I get it. Of course, you're having an extreme emotional reaction to these horrible situations. It's not uncommon. We're only humans, for heaven's sakes, right? Somebody who ODs or has a massive drug problem, you want to try and protect them. You want to try and protect other people in society. But should you ban people from the internet because of it? Of course not, right? So Senate Bill 86, horrible bill. It basically would have turned social media platforms into agents of the state. Social media platforms would have had to be required by law to have a mechanism in place where people can report violations of those issues that we just talked about. And then they would have 72 hours to permanently ban you using all available technology to permanently ban you from their website forever. So you're on there and you're like, hey man, I got an extra joint, who wants to buy it or whatever, you know what I mean? Or hey, let's talk about how we can circumvent Senate Bill 3, this horrible gun bill. Hey, what if you go to Wyoming and buy the gun there and you buy it 80% lower and you do this and you do that? Is that still against the law? Heck, you're trying to engage in illegal gun sales, buddy. You're banned from Facebook for life. You're banned from X for life. And if we don't follow along, the Attorney General is going to come after us. That's what Senate Bill 86 was about. So friends over at Rocky Mountain Gun Owners said that Senate Bill 86 was textbook authoritarian censorship, and Polis vetoed it. Got to say, really happy about that. Basically, here's a line from that bill. If the social media company determines that the user violated the social media platform's published policies or state law, what law could that be? Well, it's up to interpretation, right? They would have to terminate the user's account on the social media platform within 24 hours after the determination is made and use all available methods and technology to prevent the user from operating, registering, establishing, or opening an account or profile on the social media platform. So I was going from memory, I was a little off, but you get the point, right? Insane. I mean, it was an anti-gun bill. Now, the craziest part about this bill is it passed the House and the Senate with flying colors originally, right? It was one of those bills that kind of went under the radar. There were some of us talking about it when it was going there. I got a phone call from somebody in the House leadership on the Republican side because I was threatening them when this bill made it through the House the first time, and they didn't like that. But Polis did the right thing, and he vetoed it. I mean, that's one thing he's good on is internet freedom. Rally for Our Rights, good friend Leslie Hollywood said, talk about guns on social platforms from Colorado, get censored. Talk about how to lawfully build a gun or promote a new product in your gun store, get banned, and possibly get turned over to the police. Senate Bill 86 is on Governor Polis' desk and on and on and on. But basically, yeah, they would be required to report you to law enforcement if they saw something like that. So now all of a sudden you have this mechanism in place where they're spying on you proactively, right? And who's going to be our next Attorney General in Colorado? God forbid, but it might be Jenna Griswold. If you know anything about her, she is the master at weaponizing her office to go after political opponents. So if Senate Bill 86 passed, became law, Polis didn't veto it, now all of a sudden anybody who's on Telegram, on Signal, talking about any of these things, better watch out. Here's my post there. I was really trying to call attention to it being a gun bill. Senate Bill 86. Will Senate Bill 86 be used as an extension of Senate Bill 3? This bill will give power to the state to crack down on, quote, the sale of firearm in violation of state or federal law, end quote, making online platforms do the work to investigate and report users. Senate Bill 3 was signed by the governor and outlaws the standard purchase of the most commonly available firearms in the country. So under Senate Bill 86, we'll see the Attorney General going after online sales. I said, were Republicans duped? Or maybe they weren't worried about it. So, you see the subject uses there, and this is what the Republicans kept saying. No, it only applies to the sale or advertisement of an illicit substance, the sale of a firearm in violation of state and federal law. And it's the craziest thing is they just passed the most restrictive anti-gun law in history in Colorado. And then 2 weeks later, the Republicans are like, yeah, let's have the social media companies enforce that law with the backing of the Attorney General. It's like, what? And it's like, no, because they were trying to go after the criminals, of course. Libertarian Party of Colorado, great leader on this fight, saying, call your reps now. Any House member who votes for the Colorado KGB through the Senate Bill 86 veto override will be challenged by a libertarian. This is completely unacceptable in a free society. And I guarantee you that got their attention because Rebecca Kelty won by 3 votes. She had a libertarian challenger. She ain't winning. You had Dan Woog winning by 120 votes or whatever it was. He is a libertarian challenger. He ain't winning. Ryan Gonzalez, 536 votes. That's the 3 seats they picked up last year. All of these Republicans were scared when this post went up. And that's the power of Libertarian Party, of grassroots, of the ability for people to basically kill this bill. And it died. Senate Bill 86 died the death it deserved, not only at the hands of the governor, but at the hands of grassroots activists who stood up, spoke out, and got this bill killed. I guarantee you, so this bill flew through the Senate. So veto override, it's a Senate bill, goes through the Senate first. That Friday passes the Senate. One Republican votes against it, Mark Baisley. Mark Baisley is the most based, most libertarian senator we have in Colorado. Wish there was others, but he's the strongest one. He's the only one who votes against it. Friday, if it would have been in the House, they would have passed it. But because there was so much grassroots pressure from LPCO, RMGO, anything that hopefully I helped, all these other groups and all these people out there, there was so much pressure, so many people calling and emailing. By Monday, when this bill came up, they knew they didn't have the votes to do it. They knew they didn't. 2 days of grassroots activism killed this bill. And why is that so important? Because Republicans were no longer in the super minority. If Democrats had the super majority, they could ram this through without the Republicans mattering. Because you have to have a 2/3 vote to override a governor's veto, a 2/3 vote. Because Democrats no longer had that 2/3 vote, they needed the Republicans to be on board. And the Republicans weren't going to get on board after all the grassroots pressure. So this is a vote to basically lay over the bill to May 9th after the session is over. The session ended on May 7th. So that's another way to kill a bill. They're saying, hey, we're not even going to vote on this bill. Let's just vote to say, hey, we're not going to hear this bill till May 9th. Well, we adjourn on May 7th. The bill's effectively dead. So 51-13, that bill died. So, that's one of the biggest lessons out of all the depressing topics we covered tonight. After all of this discouraged looks and anguished faces I saw, the truth is grassroots pressure can work. Not all the time, don't get me wrong, but it can work sometimes. And we win on the margins, right? Liberty is gained on the margins. We win here, we win there. We're not gonna, if we think that we're gonna make some sweeping change overnight and all of a sudden the world will be reversed and we'll be living in this utopian free society, we know that's not the reality of life on earth. But one victory breeds another victory. One fight won means another fight can be won. Grassroots pressure can work, folks. And the fight is not over. Of course, we have 2026 legislative session coming up. Now, traditionally, not to get any false sense of optimism, but generally speaking, 2026 is an election year. So they're usually a little bit more tempered. The bills aren't quite as extreme. Usually, now we're in crazy times right now, this clown world we live in, who knows? But generally speaking, the mid-year, the 2025, since we just had an election, voters have short-term memory. Come 2025, they're going to pass all the crazy stuff. 2026, they're going to say, okay, we're not going to be as crazy because we have an election. They're going to be up for re-election in just a few months. So hopefully they're going to pull back a little bit. That's what we're all hoping for. But nonetheless, through organization, through numbers, through exposure, public pressure, and getting good candidates to run, we can have an impact. And ultimately, these battles are won at the ballot box. That is 100% true. We need to win in the 2026 elections. And I'm not partisan. I'm a libertarian. I'm not Republican. But at the same time, and if they're pro-liberty Democrats, great. I hope they win. That's wonderful. I think that's a viable strategy to get pro-liberty Democrats elected. Get pro-liberty Republicans elected. I'm so hard on the Republicans because I want them to do good. But the fact is, we can win. But it's only going to take one thing, folks. There's only one magic formula to get there. One hope for humanity, and that is you. Because one person can make a difference. One voice can be heard. One action can matter. So thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
Thanks, Josh.
You made a broad subject very interesting.
Brandon, thanks so much. That was really informative. I'm not in favor of extra federal oversight, but I'm just wondering, and this might be out of your wheelhouse a little bit, but I'm wondering if some of these egregious, like trampling on the Constitution, if Pam Bondi and, the feds are like, I think they're going after Jenna Griswold. I think they might be some of these bills, like the guns, especially trampling Second Amendments. Like, are they doing anything that you know of to come to Colorado and say no bueno?
I don't think nothing's really happened yet. And of course, that's the biggest news story with the new Trump administration is nothing has happened yet. The Epstein files haven't been released. There's so much that hasn't happened yet, but so many of us are hopeful, of course, and it's that the idea of governments fighting each other. That's great. I hope that happens. I hope there's so much conflict and so much fighting between the governments that they can leave the people alone. I hope so. If they reform the elections at the federal level, that could change things in Colorado. Hopefully, that's one of our best hopes, I think. But yeah, I mean, we've seen them withhold money. They're going to withhold money. That's the big thing they can do. Denver, the state of Colorado as well. They're going to do what they can to withdraw funds. How far are they going to go after that? I don't know. It'd be great. It'd be great to see tribunals. It'd be great, and it'd be great for people to be held accountable for COVID. You know what I mean? And for Jared Polis to be under scrutiny on trial for the crimes during COVID. It'd be awesome to see, but am I holding out hope? Not really. I don't think there's anybody going to come to save us, unfortunately. I think that's the reality of it. I think it's up to us. And even if they do something, we still have to, my mindset is we still have to have the opinion that they're not going to do anything, and we got to do it. We got to be the leaders. We have to be the ones leading the charge and fighting. Nobody's going to come and save us. I don't think so.
I have several questions regarding that gun bill. So first of them, is it already in place? So it's when should be in place?
Senate Bill 3 will start August 1st, 2026. The only good part about that is it's 4 months before the election. So hopefully the voters will be pretty upset.
Okay. Another question. So if I understand you correctly, does it mean it's still possible to buy semi-automatic guns with detachable magazines if you have permission from sheriff?
Until August 1st, 2026, everything's the same. You can definitely do it. Now, after August 1st, 2026, in order to buy a AR-15 or an AK-47, any semi-automatic gun, there's some debate if handguns are included. Dave Kopel at the Independence Institute thinks handguns are included in that. We'll see. But you would have to get a permission slip from the sheriff to take a class from Parks and Wildlife, pass that, pay all their fees, whatever it takes, go through that whole rigmarole. And then you have permission from our government to buy a semi-automatic firearm. Yes.
Okay. So it will be possible, but very complicated. And does it affect any previously bought guns? Or so it's still possible to use them at shooting range, for hunting, anything like that. It just prevent buying new guns without that specific permission.
Manufacture, buying, and selling.
So it means that this year we will have a lot of people who really want to buy guns. They should buy. So it will be, how to say, sale year.
Yeah, big time.
So
big time.
All of the people will buy. Okay, thank you for that.
Buy as many guns as you can.
Thank you.
Question for you. If I wanted to financially support Free State Colorado, how would I go about doing that?
I'm in the process of setting up an online donations platform set up.
Would anybody else here like to support Free State Colorado financially? Did anyone be open to that? I've been hassling Brandon for months, so...
Yes, I've just been a little busy, but yes, I do want to set that up. My plans ultimately turn Free State Colorado into more of an organization, have staff, have people, and have this coordinated statewide effort to free our state from the grips of the tyrants. That's the plan, folks.
So you are obviously an adult with a very full-time job, and you do all of this work to support our liberties throughout Colorado. So first of all, thank you. Second of all, how can other people that have full-time jobs and busy schedules really work to support liberty? What are the most effective means to do that, and what would you recommend?
I think a lot of it depends on your interest, right? I think there's different levels of activism. I think ultimately a lot of people, it's issue-based, right? Like there's people like guns is their only issue, or psychedelics or natural medicines or cannabis or this or that. Some people it's tax policy. Some people, everybody has kind of a different issue that they care about the most. So I think pay attention to that issue, set up a Google alert, get emails every day about that specific issue. I think that's one key. And then find organizations and other people already involved in the fight, for those specific issues. I think that's important. And then if you're a location, if you care, that's one aspect of it is issues-based. The other aspect of it, which fundamentally is more important in my mind, is location-based activism, right? So this is, do you know who your state rep is? Do you know who your state senator is? Do you know who your congressperson is? Do you know who your city council member is? Do you know what district or ward you live in? Do you know who your mayor is? And find those people. That is your direct area of responsibility. Where if you live in that community and they're supposed to be representing you, you should know who they are, how they vote, and if they're bad, do everything possible to get them out. So start there. And if you're like, hey, listen, my city council member is 100% libertarian, pro-liberty, whatever. So is my mayor. So is my state senator. So is my state rep. Then that's great. Then move on to focusing on what's happening outside of your districts. But start there. That's your home. That's your garden to tend. You know what I mean? Start in your neighborhood. Start local. I think that's key.
Thank you. This was a really great overview. I'm curious on how many of these bills have various lobbyists that are kind of promoting that. And one that stunned me last year, I don't think you talked about it, but it was the first time a motorcycle came up, and I said, how big is the motorcycle lobby to advocate, passing in traffic and getting to the light? It just stunned me. So I'm just kind of curious of your perspective on how large or significant some of these advocacy groups are.
Ultimately, that's where most of the power lies, I think. So interesting right now, like obviously we have till next January of 2026, but I can guarantee you that between now and then, lobbyists, special interest groups, all these organizations are going to be working with lawmakers to already put pre-written legislation in their hands to wine and dine them, to tell them why this bill is so great for their district and why they should support it. And these lobbyists show up at all the 527 events and all the little mixers and this and that, and shake the hands and kiss the babies and get them set up. So I think the lobbyist group is huge. I mean, ultimately, we talked about one half hour to stay open to serve alcohol later. I mean, it's insane. New York City's at 4 a.m. Colorado's stuck at 2 a.m. Try to move it to 2:30. Can't do it. That's how strong the anti-alcohol lobbyists are. The Mothers Against Drunk Driving groups, all these other people. Ultimately, the most important thing for these legislators is getting reelected, right? So if they know these special interest groups or these advocacy groups or these community groups are going to stop me from being elected, then I'm going to listen. Which is why Senate Bill 86, the fight was there, because they knew people like RMGO, people like LPCO, other groups out there who are heavily involved in elections are going to get involved. That's the only reason they listen, ultimately, is because it's going to cost them their job. So if you want to be powerful, learn how to cost them their job. Then they will listen to you. Otherwise, it's all pats on the backs and handshakes and a nod and a wink.
So, Brandon, I have a good friend of mine, and I actually see her. She's a muscle, a naturopath healer. I take all kinds of supplements, and they've actually really been effective in cleansing my body. I know there was a bill that was on there. I don't know if it was covered in that health part that you were mentioning, but I mean, it really was an attack on, it was really outright like big pharma trying to squash any competition. I can't remember the bill, but I'm a little fuzzy on some of those details, but she said, if I want to give somebody, extra magnesium, for this problem, and she's healed people, but she's like, I could go to jail.
And I didn't mean to cover that one. That was when I was like, I left one out even about, and it's this, the nutritional medicine licensure. So they want to they're creating a whole new licensing scheme where if you want to be engaged in nutritional therapy and things like that, you have to be licensed with this Department of Regulatory Affairs. You have to get a naturopathic license and all this BS. Yeah, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. We had the bill sponsors on one of our podcasts, our live streams, and they said, well, the real reason we're doing it is because the industry wants it, because that's how the only way they're going to get covered by insurance. If they're not licensed, this and that, then they're not going to get reimbursed by insurance. So we have people in our district, whatever, who knows if I believe that or not, but we have people in our community who want these services and they can't pay for it out of pocket. But if it's regulated by the state government, now all of a sudden their insurance companies are going to cover it, and we're going to be able to get these people extra medicine and extra help, and that they won't have to pay for necessarily. So that was kind of the BS behind it, if you ask me, but ultimately that was kind of the idea, was it's a way for them to get insurance companies able to get to reimburse people who are willing to play the game that the state offers. You know what I mean? You play the game, you pay the fees, you get licensed, you take the test, you do this and that, and now all of a sudden you get a piece of the pie from the insurance market because we've carved out the law to make that happen. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. So yeah, it was a bad bill. It was horrible. It was a really horrible bill. It did pass, yeah.
Following up on the lobbying question, is it possible for libertarians to use that as a strategy to apply pressure to politicians? Or is it lobbying is more effective on an issue basis rather than like an ideology basis? Right, like rather than like passing bills through lobbyists, could there be lobbyists to remove bills or to prevent bills from passing? Could it be to like a defensive play, or would that just not work?
It's a good question. Yeah, I think so. I think there's some opportunity there. You know what I mean? If you had like grassroots lobbyists, I mean, look at that's what Ian Escalante at RMGO does. That's what some of these other liberty activists are registered lobbyists, right? Where they show up and talk to legislators and this and that. But I think you do have to be issue-based, and you have to represent a community that matters to the legislator. Because you could have a lobbyist come up to them and be like, oh, I represent this group of people or this industry. Well, none of those people are in my district. None of those people are voting for me. So maybe I'll listen, maybe I won't. You know what I mean? But if you have a lobbyist who's directly representative of people in their community, where it's going to come back and say, hey, you're going to get a nasty editorial written about you come election time, or you're going to be seen as our champion for this one issue, and all the voters in your district are going to know how wonderful you are, that'll get their attention for sure.
So as far as the grassroots lobbying, that's sort of more like ad hoc, decentralized, spontaneous, coordinated type stuff. But you could have a libertarian lobby made up of homeowners, made up of parents, made up of various types of people that would have a huge proportion of some community, and that could be turned into a tip of the spear. In theory, I'm just sort of thinking out loud here.
Definitely. Yeah. I think there's a massive opportunity for that. It's just about getting organized, right? And I think that's why the Democratic establishment has been so successful, is because they're so organized, right? They have a professional political class that's organizing all the time. They have a million little nonprofits and NGOs and all these different little groups that support specific single issues or broader issue coalitions. And then they use that, they weaponize it, right? By getting all those people to show up for a lobby day at the Capitol, to wear the same shirt, to do a little speech and invite the legislator out and get their picture taken and be in their newsletter and this and that. So yeah, it just requires organization. The sky's the limit. I mean, the fact is we have such power as individuals. If somebody's willing to take the time to get organized, to mobilize people, to find the other people who care about that one issue you do, you can have a tremendous impact. And that's one of the most exciting things and why I'm so optimistic.
Thank you.
3 more questions.
What do you think we are going to see in the next? I know it's only been a few days, but is banning fluoride in water, chemtrails, any of these things that are kind of more of a getting some exposure on a national topic, or do you see that some of these ones that didn't pass, the bad ones, are they going to be resurrected?
Yes, they're going to be definitely resurrected. There's going to be all these new fees, new requirements, and all these ways to pay off their special interest friends, of course. The biggest thing we're going to run into is a budget shortfall. Check out on Free State Colorado on my YouTube channel, I interviewed Representative Larry Don Sukla, released that today. And he says that basically he thinks in 3 or 4 months they're going to call a special session because the legislature did such a bad job of managing the money that they're going to all of a sudden in 3-4 months, they're going to have a total budget crisis and be like, oh, the state doesn't have any money. We need to call a special session, get everybody back in there. And they're going to try and do something to attack Tabor, take away our, raise fees, take away our money that way. So I think that's that's in the short term. We'll probably see a special session this year dealing with budgetary issues. I think that's in the near future. And then next year in 26, I mean, it depends how the federal fight goes, of course, but there's going to be more virtue signaling to go after Trump and to do all this anti-Trump stuff, of course. Hopefully it's toned down a little bit because it's a big election year. I really hope so that that's the case. But of course, we have some extremists down there who are going to do some crazy stuff. So I don't know. Expect the unexpected. Expect the craziness to continue. But we'll be doing a live stream every Sunday night during the 2026 legislative session for 2+ hours, so you can tune in and find out.
I have a question regarding that small trucks which you showed to us. I'm slightly confused. I thought every vehicle which allowed in United States, it will be allowed in every state of United States. But how it works with that small trucks?
I think there's additional state regulations that do limit and have certain requirements about what specific vehicles can be titled by the state of Colorado, can be registered in the state of Colorado. So you could go buy one of those vehicles now. I think like Larry Don Sukla has one, if I'm not mistaken. I think I saw Scott, if he's still back there, sitting in one of those trucks on X the other day. But so you can buy those trucks, you just can't register it and title it, which means you can't necessarily drive it on the road because you don't have it plated. So in order to be registered and titled, that is state specific, I believe, from what I understand. Now there's regulations about what vehicles in general are allowed for sale, but the state can be more restrictive than that, is what I understand.
Thank you.
Last question.
With 1312, it really woke up a lot of people. There were a lot of people I know, including my own wife, that signed up to testify for that bill for the very first time. I've seen a lot of Christian organizations really start getting more active because they're seeing what's going on. There's a lot of people that got motivated. My question to you is, after years and years of blackpilling, or if you don't know what that phrase means, essentially it means people who became disenfranchised after decades. How do we help motivate more and more people to wake up, as we saw with 1312? How do we keep that momentum going so we can really build something into the 2026 legislative session?
So 2 parts to that question. I think how to wake people up or how to get them motivated. It's got to be social media. I mean, ultimately, new media organizations, social media, making YouTube videos, making Facebook videos, getting doing posts out there, expanding the audience so more people are hearing about these things. Because I can tell you right now, like people are like, they don't believe. Nobody's heard of has anybody heard of all of these bills that went down at the state capitol this year? Like anybody in this room has knew every single bill down there? I mean, very limited, right? Like, yeah, and I didn't even cover all of them. Like there's stuff that passed and I'm like, I didn't even know that existed, and I was paying like super close attention, right? So the first step is getting people informed. I mean, that's part of it, right? Is getting the right information to the right people, the people who are going to be responsive to it, the people who are interested in it. And then that can be motivating as well so that people know what's going on. But the most important part is organizing people, right? The real part is not necessarily waking up new people. That's important. But the more important part is the people who are already awake, right? The people who've already taken that red pill. Find them, get them organized, get them mobilized, get them into a system or a structure or an organization where they can actually have an impact, where you can team up with everybody in your neighborhood. Maybe you get the voter registration file for everybody for your county, right? And then you pull up just the people in your precinct, right? You can find your precinct number. Here's everybody who's registered Libertarian in my precinct. Or here's everybody who's registered Republican, registered Democrat. Maybe you talk to them. You have conversations with them. You find out the ones that you agree with on certain issues, and then you say, hey, listen, this is our community. Let's everybody who agrees with me, all these people I found, let's get involved in the city council race this year. Let's find a candidate to support. You know what I mean? So it's up to each of us at that individual level to get organized and to find the others. I think that's really our prerogative, and coming to meetups is a great way to do it. Showing up, connecting with people on social media, but that's got to turn into something. It's got to turn into action. Ultimately, I had a comment on my video from this morning where somebody's like, I hate videos like this. There's so many videos talking about how terrible things are, but I want a video telling me what to, give me a call to action, give me something to do. And they went like this long diatribe. And I'm like, I appreciate that, right? Like, they're so fed up and so angry, but they want to do something. And I think there's a lot of people out there like that, who are like, I just need some motivation. I need a specific, one of those SMART goals or whatever, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-oriented, or whatever it is. Some goal that you can focus on and say, this is my hill, this is where I'm going to fight, and you build it. Create a Facebook group, get on Nextdoor, build a website, find those people who care about that one issue and get organized about it. But it's up to us individually to do it. I mean, I know we all see it on social media where somebody's complaining and they're like, oh, well, why don't you do this? Or why don't you do that? It's like, well, why don't you do that? It's like, you need to do this. Or somebody will be like, you should be talking about this, or you should be doing that. I'm like, well, you do it. If you think it's so important, why aren't you doing it? No offense, but you can do it too. It's not like why do I have to do it, right? Like I want to do it. Everybody has their own wheelhouse. Everybody has their own idea of what they want to do. So find that idea and then find the others and get organized and pick one battle. And if it's just one battle, that's enough.
That's our talk. Give it up for Brandon.